Welcome to Strip Coverlet, where we squeeze the bigger picture out of literature. I'm Adrian Fort, and we're here for another poetry discussion as we are quickly approaching 200 poetry discussions in the Poetry Discussion playlist here on the channel. Today's poem comes to us from Charles Bukowski, one of my probably my second favorite poet. The poem in question is known as The Genius of the Crowd, and it reads as such. There is enough treachery, hatred, violence, absurdity in the average human being to supply any given army on any given day. And the best at murder are those who preach against it. And the best at hate are those who preach love. And the best at war, finally, are those who preach peace. Those who preach God need God. Those who preach peace do not have peace. Those who preach peace do not have love. Beware the preachers. Beware the knowers. Beware those who are always reading books. Beware those who either detest poverty or are proud of it. Beware those quick to praise, for they need praise in return. Beware those who are quick to censor. They are afraid of what they do not know. Beware those who seek constant crowds, for they are nothing alone. Beware the average man, the average woman. Beware their love. Their love is average, seeks average. But there is genius in their hatred. There is enough genius in their hatred to kill you, to kill anybody. Not wanting solitude, not understanding solitude, they will attempt to destroy anything that differs from their own, not being able to create art. They will not understand art. They will consider their failure as creators only as a failure of the world. Not being able to love fully, they will believe your love incomplete. And then they will hate you. And their hatred will be perfect, like a shining diamond, like a knife, like a mountain, like a tiger, like hemlock. Their finest art. So, I think a lot of what poetry can come down to sometimes is sort of like Hills Like White Elephants by Ernest Hemingway. It's a short story about a guy and a girl having a fight in a bar. Well, they're having a fight over an abortion, but they never say abortion. But the story's about abortion. But it's not. It's not. What the story is about is the dynamic between those two people and how she has all the power in that situation and she's bullying him. And he doesn't see it. He's too dumb to understand it in that situation. But she is. Here, this is a poem about the genius of the crowd and their hatred. But really what I think it's about is one word: humility. Let's reread this poem with humility in mind. Now, humility tamps down hatred. Humility tamps down judgment. Humility puts other people first. So, I want you to read all of the negatives in this poem as a lack of humility, as hubris, as ego. Read it all as ego. Read it as the lack of humility. There is enough treachery, hatred, violence, absurdity in the average human being to supply any given army on any given day. And the best at murder are those who preach against it. They have the ego to preach against it, to tell you what you are doing wrong. They do not have the humility to try to figure it out for themselves, to try to really figure it out for themselves. And the best at hate are those who preach love. I'm telling you how you need to love. Don't you understand how you should love? You don't get it. You don't get it, do you? Are you too dumb to understand how you should love? That is not a humble voice. It is the voice of hubris. And the best at war, finally, are those who preach peace. You should be doing peace. You should be peaceable. You should calm down. Not me. All of my anger is righteous. All of my hatred is righteous. All of the actions in violence that I will perpetrate are righteous. That is not a humble place to be. Those who preach God need God. One of the most maybe egotistical things that someone could do would be to speak for a creator of all things. Right? Those who preach peace do not have peace. Those who preach peace do not have love. Beware the preachers. Beware the knowers. Beware those who are always reading books. I'm looking at you. Beware those who either detest poverty or are proud of it. We have a lot of this today. People who are taking up arms against the capitalist system, right? Because communism is always fruitful. Why don't we just try it here? Or people who revel in their own poverty. People who are proud of it. Being proud of something is the opposite of being humble, right? Beware those quick to praise, for they need praise in return. Beware those who are quick to censor. They are afraid of what they do not know. But they don't see it that way, do they? People who are censorious believe that they have your best interest in mind. There is if so the whole argument around pornography was a very interesting debate in American history. And two of the most sort of stunning mental escapades that were proliferated during that time. There's um, the famous definition of pornography. I don't know what it is, but I know it when I see it. Well, therein lies the problem, right? You can always be telling someone that is pornographic. And hey, I've got to see all of it, don't I? I have to see all of it in order to tell you what is pornographic. Shouldn't that come across my desk? And from the very same sort of tinging of that argument, the other piece of the debate that is always stuck in my mind, and I got this from Christopher Hitchens. Tell me who. So, okay, we're going to get rid of something called pornography. We're going to get rid of it. Okay. Tell me who you trust to be the one that says that. Who do you trust to define it? Who do you trust to say this is not? Who is it that you trust to make that decision for you? For you. You are then and thereabouts telling someone else you are way more intelligent than I am. I can't decipher whether or not this is good or bad for me. Oh my goodness, oh my Lord. I can't tell. Wouldn't you please do this thinking for me? I don't trust anyone with that. So that's where the censors come into play. Beware those who seek constant crowds, for they are nothing alone. Beware the average man, the average woman. Beware their love. Their love is average, seeks average. I think that one of the things that is most interesting about humility is the fact that when one is humble, they value the people in their lives a whole lot more. The people in their lives are not disposable. When the people in your life are not disposable, loving them hard is easier. Loving people easily makes a lot of stuff in life hard. But loving those people in your life hard will make your relationship with them easier. But there is genius in their hatred. Isn't that interesting? There is genius in their hatred. There is enough genius in their hatred to kill you. I think the hatred mechanism is close to the disgust mechanism, and the disgust mechanism is always contingent upon the individual. It's always contingent upon the self, right? You were disgusted what might happen to you. The disgust impulse is because of what might happen to you. One of the most disgusted I've ever been, and this is going to be not the most graphic story, but a pretty graphic story. I lived with a roommate all the way up in St. Joe, and he wore bandanas a lot. And when it was summer, so we went to school up there. When it was summer, he basically moved back down with his parents. Well, I wasn't in that position, so I stayed there. He had, apparently, at some point, balled up his sweaty bandana and thrown it in the corner of the kitchen. One day, something stank in the kitchen, and there were bugs in that bandana. I didn't even know it was there, right? I was so disgusted, scrubbing everything, cleaning everything, spraying everything. And it wasn't because of the bandana. It was because those bugs could have made their way into my room while I was asleep and crawled in my mouth. That's where the disgust mechanism comes from. That's where the hatred mechanism comes from. The hatred mechanism, I think, is contingent upon the self. We hate those things most which we see inside ourselves. The thing inside yourself that you rail so hard against is something that you will hate in another person. If you are someone who works out a lot and you have to stay fit, because you see the possibility in yourself to gain weight and lose control of those things. Those are the people who end up being disgusted, end up hating people who are overweight. Oh, look at him putting another Twinkie in his mouth. What an idiot. He doesn't need that, right? That individual hates the ho-ho Twinkie addiction because he has railed against it so hard in himself, knowing that it's in him. That's what hatred is. There is genius in their hatred. Hatred enough to kill you, to kill anybody, not wanting solitude, not understanding solitude. They will attempt to destroy anything that differs from their own, not being able to create art. They will not understand art. So where does humility come into this part? Art. Where does humility, where does the humble play into art? Well, if you know very egotistical artists, normally they're not particularly that good, because the humble artist understands the story, the song, the painting, the whatever, the movie Whatever that is bigger than the self. The self, the ego, is secondary to that art. They will consider their failure as creators only as a failure of the world not being able to fully love. They will believe your love incomplete, and then they will hate you, and their hatred will be perfect. Like a shining diamond, like a knife, like a mountain, like a tiger, like hemlock, their finest art. And this, to keep me humble, is a great quote from one of the great philosophers of all time, Marcus Aurelius. Alexander the Great and his mule driver both died, and the same thing happened to both. Worm food, baby. Alexander the Great, obviously, pretty great. His mule driver, worked for a living, average kind of guy, not a conqueror. Both of their times expired, and the same thing happened to each of them. That is all I have for this poetry discussion. If you like what I do here, hitting the like button really helps me out on the channel. It tells YouTube to share this video with other literature lovers. And if you find yourself here by chance but not design, consider hitting the subscribe button, because literature is the only thing I talk about on this channel. There is poetry every Monday, at least every Monday, but I also do novel read-alongs. I'm working on 2 right now. I promise I'm getting around to them, as well as short stories. And hey, that's literature. What else is there? What else is there in the world? You shouldn't always be reading books, though. Take it from Charles Bukowski. I make a lot of videos on this channel about literature, and I hope to have you back for the next one.